Welcome back, everyone, to our second Inside the Factory session. I'm Aaron, and I'm joined by Harlan and Sasha. Today, we're going to be talking about customer engagement. How do we involve customers? How do we listen to customers? How do we implement feedback? And this will be a two-part session. We'll have first this discussion with Harlan and Sasha, and then we'll have a customer join us and give their perspective as well. Some recent comments have suggested the Revit team doesn't interact with customers. What's your reaction to that, Sasha?
We really do interact with customers on a daily basis. And that goes really for pretty much anyone in the organization. So I talked about, as a young developer, I didn't have a lot of that. I think that's really changed. And so we have a lot of sources where not only are people directly might be emailing people, but we actually have customers that are participating in regular reviews with teams. Our product owners who are in charge of kind of figuring out the priorities of individual teams are constantly running user research. We have user research teams where we're sending out surveys, asking customer for feedback, trying to figure out what are the specific challenges that we need to solve the project. And certainly the product management team is also out there. We're trying to cover a broad swath of customer feedback as much as we can possibly handle as human beings.
You agree with that, Harlan?
Yeah, I mean, my reaction to that sentiment that we don't listen to customers is I wish those customers could actually participate in what we already do, and that we need to be more out there letting people know that these opportunities are available. I feel like that's kind of the thing that struck me about those comments was, oh man, these people, this is a great opportunity to engage them and start to be more visible about what we do behind the scenes sometimes. So I'm grateful we're doing this series so we can talk about that stuff. So hopefully these folks will find a way that meets their needs to engage with us.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Harlan. We can always do more. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do that. So yeah, absolutely. Hopefully this gives you guys some insight into ways that you can provide feedback so that you're able to participate if you feel that you have something to give.
Yeah, let's get specific. So one popular form that comes to mind is Revit Ideas. Harlan, do you monitor Revit Ideas?
Yes, absolutely. We monitor Revit Ideas. Me, Sasha, the other PMs, all of our POs, even our developers are reviewing what gets posted, what's available. We're up there weekly, sometimes monthly, sometimes daily, all the time during our process to kind of understand what people are looking for and needing. I think overall, because there is so much, and part of it is we also don't want to be too inserted into the process, and try to color the conversation too much. So we try to listen. That's why we try to not hang and comment on every single thing that's coming in, because we also want the community to be able to discuss an idea, discuss whether it's good or bad, and start to have that conversation without kind of Autodesk being inserted into that. So I do think we could do a better job making sure people know that we've looked at stuff and that we've seen an idea, but we're constantly there reading and looking. We're kind of at the end of the day, I think we lurk a little too much, and we can be more in there to actually tell people just, hey, we hear you, we've seen this idea.
I mean, I get a lot of notifications for Revit Ideas. Even if I'm not looking at Revit Ideas, they come into my inbox. So it is absolutely something that we look at and review. And anytime we're interested in finding out what our customers thinking about, we'll do a quick search, think about, okay, here we're looking at schedules or something like that. What are the ideas that customers have with schedules?
I think Harlan was on stage when Revit Ideas was launched, and I was sitting there, and I think by day 2 it was 700 and something. It was a fairly popular idea platform.
Yeah.
Sasha, what do the statuses mean there?
Yeah, really good question, because I think the statuses are one of the challenges we struggle a little bit with Revit Ideas, and I want to be upfront about that, right? I feel that we haven't managed Revit Ideas as well as we could have. So, and the statuses as they exist reflect that a little bit, right? So we have a number of statuses. Right now, we really use 2 statuses only. 3 statuses. One of them is gathering support. That basically is for all ideas out there, that is where they are. We're considering all of them. So if something hasn't been closed as rejected, we're thinking about it. It's possible that we may decide to do it. And then the other status that we use is accepted. And at that point, it's something that we've actually said, yes, this is on our roadmap. Those are basically the three statuses. There are some that are, I believe, currently set to what's the
Under
what's the name?
review.
Under review. Yes, thank you, Harlan. So they're set to under review. Those issues are actually things that are just gathering support. We didn't want to bother the entire community by changing them, but they're actually in no different a state. So I would say all issues are under review at all times because we want to make sure that we're thinking about a broad spectrum of things, not just because something got X number of votes or something like that. We really want to be thinking about all of them as opportunities for us to improve the software.
Yeah, Sasha, the one status you missed there was implemented. So we do we do try to mark things when we actually implement an idea, and sometimes that's we'll find today, like Sasha mentioned, we can do a better job managing these. So we sometimes we miss things we implemented and have to go back and make sure, oh yeah, we actually did that in this version, because there is a lot of there. So we're trying to make sure that we stay on top of it from that perspective, but we can definitely do better.
So some ideas might be, stuck in a status for a while. Is that just because it hasn't received enough customer support, or are there some other factors that might come into play?
Primarily that, what I was saying a little bit earlier is that, certain status like under review really means it's just gathering support. So pretty much all ideas, unless they are accepted, implemented, or rejected, are all things that we're considering. So that status doesn't mean a lot, other than at some point we might have moved it to another status because we were trying a different system. I think our goal was actually just using those statuses was to simplify. That was our goal, because we want to consider everything. Because a lot of it can have value for very specific reasons. So we may have conversations with 3 or 4 customers and all of them say, hey, this is the most important thing that is blocking our process. And then I go and I search on Revit Ideas, and sometimes it's not even there. And that one really surprises me, but it happens every once in a while where we consistently hear from multiple customers that something is really, really bad, and then we can't find it in our Revit Ideas. So it's very interesting. Finding that right balance. So sometimes we're like, this really should be an idea because all customers want it, but we can't even say that it was a Revit idea we implemented.
So this kind of addresses another thought. Sometimes an idea might receive a ton of votes and it seems like it doesn't get any traction, whereas something that, as you said, is not even there or has only got 1 or 2 votes is suddenly pushed forward into development, and it can confuse customers where they think that, like you said, like the product team is doing some things and then they go search Revit Ideas just to see what boxes they've checked, as opposed to going the other route. Like, Harlan, what do you think of that?
So we think of Revit Ideas as just one of the inputs we take into the process of actually what we're working on and doing. And it can appear like, oh yeah, that has a ton of votes. But relative also to maybe other feedback that we've gotten in other sources, it might not be there. Or some of the ideas that have a lot of votes, we've asked the community in other forums, and they've said half those customers might say, no, don't do that, right? Even though it has 600, 700 votes, they may be like, oh, that would really hurt our process at the end of the day. And so often we're taking a much more balanced view of, whether or not that thing really needs to be done in that way, or whether or not we can achieve it in some other way. And also looking across all the different areas that people ask us for feedback. And Sasha mentioned this, we don't just pay attention to only the idea count for starters, because sometimes, an idea doesn't, as folks will know, it doesn't get a lot of traction, or it gets missed in the swath of things, but it's actually could be very important for either a subset or a certain workflow. And so we're kind of trying to balance those things at the same time, and recognize that, Revit Ideas isn't the only place we're getting feedback from. So even if, there it only shows 1 vote, in other places, a lot more people could have been talking about it as a critical thing for their workflow.
I think the other thing to bring up here is that not all ideas are created equal in terms of effort. So some of the things that are at the top of the list, yes, we know that they're really important, but they may be huge projects. And then that means that we can do 10 smaller projects or this one big project. And a lot of the time, in total value, those 10 projects may end up being more valuable and deliver more benefit to our customers. So those are the kind of trade-offs that we have to figure out as product managers to say, do we do this big thing or do we do the smaller things that also help customers? And I think finding that right balance, so we're doing both the big projects and the small ones, is the thing that makes this a bit of an art rather than a science. We're always open to, by the way, listening to feedback saying, hey, you're doing too many of the big things and you're not doing enough of the small, or vice versa. We actually do want to hear that from you. I know a lot of the time it can be difficult to determine if something is really big. If it's at the top of Revit ideas and we haven't done it in a while, that's probably a good indication of the size, I would say.
I almost involuntarily coughed out text editor a few times as you were saying that
Oh my
response.
goodness, yeah. That was an effort that I was responsible for as early in my product management career and driving that forward. That was a challenge, and there were a number of false starts on that one too. So we actually tried it, and we finally came to a solution, which is what we actually ended up delivering. So that one, we had that similar feedback then. It was like, why is it taking so long? Well, we actually did try it a few times. It took us a while to get to it.
Yeah, it's surprising how often even small things take a lot of more effort than most people might expect, and it's there's a lot of factors that come into play. Sometimes you just find out that, oh, that is actually a lot more difficult because of other things that have to be taken into consideration, or making sure that in the text case, that data upgrades, how's that going to work? How are we going to make sure that drawings stay the same between versions in cases? So there's definitely this gray area of whether something's easy or difficult. That's hard to parse, even for us as product managers, even for our developers. Sometimes it's hard to necessarily know until sometimes we start, and then we go, oh yeah, we've got a lot of areas here that we need to kind of clean up as well to make progress.
Harlan, earlier you mentioned other forums. Can you are these Autodesk forums or outside, and are these things that you read?
Yeah, we read. I try to say I read everything, but that's not true. So Revit Ideas is a great one, and one of the reasons we did that is to give places, a single dedicated place that provided that kind of future wish list functionality. But even at that time, we had Augie wish lists that we read and accessed and looked at as well. We still do that today. So user groups are a huge part of that. Even our own Autodesk forums. Now and later, people sometimes don't know Revit Ideas, so they're posting in our forums like, hey, or they're asking a question, how do I do this? Turns out that's an idea. And so, trying to understand whether that's a feature request. But we also do things like user research. Sasha mentioned surveys earlier. If you're watching this, you probably participated in one of our surveys. Over time, we send them out pretty often for feature and functionality for different projects. We obviously also have customer meetings kind of constantly. In fact, in a little while, I'm going to go talk to a customer directly about some work that we're doing. We obviously also meet with our sales team and our support teams. So I came from that world before, the support world. And, a big part of that was communicating all the issues that customers had to the product team and letting them know about what's happening. So that still happens today. We do AU. I mean, the list goes on, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn posts, our blogs, Autodesk blogs, but also the community blogs. So you can think, we read and respond and look for, commentary about our product, how it's working on industry blogs that are out there, news articles. I'm sure I'm missing stuff, Sasha. So,
yeah, well, I think there's a few things that are maybe worth highlighting in terms of areas that we actually actively seek feedback from customers that may not be as publicly available as some of the things that you mentioned, Harlan. So I think the first one is certainly our beta program. I think that's really important. Our beta is open up to anybody who wants to provide feedback, so you can kind of get an early insight into what's going on. We share our development builds, so our work in progress there. If you are interested in joining the beta, you can email revit.preview.access@autodesk.com, and we'll be happy to add you. That is the best way to get in there and to get your hands on future software. So A lot of the time in beta, we ask for feedback about features that are already in development. Sometimes we ask for feedback in features that we're thinking about. There might be surveys. We're also, a lot of the time we also look at other parts of Autodesk that may be developing something that is associated with Revit that can be also part of the beta. So there are a lot of different opportunities to participate. The other really valuable part about beta, and unfortunately, due to COVID, we're not doing an Inside the Factory live like Aaron was talking about at the beginning of this recording. But the other opportunities, we actually invite people for more interactive sessions where they are actually testing our software. We're looking at online sessions for this year, but in the future, I hope we will be able to bring back Inside the Factory live, where we actually bring customers to our office. Beta is the way that you would apply for that. So if you're part of the beta, you will get an invitation. So if you're curious, like, how do I get into this Inside the Factory live thing in the future? Beta is the answer to do that. And then last but not least, I think one area that we see a lot of customer participation in, and that really gets us kind of in-depth participation, is sprint demos. So all of our development teams do a regular demo of the work that they've done, usually every 2 weeks or so, and we invite customers to participate. So we have regular customer feedback from participants in those demos that basically provide the feedback to the team, like, oh, in the last 2 weeks you guys did this, and you really should change this, think about this other thing. And that is a really great dynamic, because that is the direct connection to a lot of developmental teams. If you're curious how you join something like that, I think a lot of the time we look for customers that provide a lot of feedback to us and constructive feedback to us in beta. So that is probably the best opportunity to say, hey, I'm really interested in providing feedback. If you start doing a beta, we might say, hey, this is a really interesting customer to invite to our sprint demos. The only reason that is kind of a little bit more selective of a process is because there's only so many people we can invite to this. So we really want to bring in people who are really passionate about providing feedback and are actively interested in providing that to us.
And that is a global program, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Inside the Factory is global. We actually have, events. We've had events in the US and China, also in Europe. So there's choices on where people can attend, to apply for a live event. We try to focus those events though on the teams that are located in that area, so that everybody, you're testing the functionality that those teams developed live. So you can have a great one-on-one engagement with the actual developers and QA and folks that are responsible for that functionality. So that's a big part of it overall. Yeah,
I mean, I can echo just what I hear from customers every time, which is that they now have that one-to-one relationship they've not had before. And that's the value in one of the high-level values in that particular program. I just have a couple of questions. Maybe these are softballs, maybe they're a little harder, but one is, I'm going to put this on Harlan. How do you decide what actually makes it to the roadmap? So in light of everything we've been talking about all these different sources of feedback, how do you actually decide?
It's a balancing act. And like Sasha said, it's also art, not a science. So we try to take all the different inputs that we have from all the feedback that we've been gathering from our executives, from the industry as a whole, to look holistically at what do we need to be able to do in the product. And then we also have to balance that against what our current teams, like Sasha mentioned, our Scrum teams, are actually capable of doing. So not every team is created equal. Some teams have specialties in certain areas, or other teams are kind of maybe a little bit more generic, but they all tend to gravitate to certain areas of the product, right? Like there's certain things that a certain team might be able to functionally do, and another team, if we could give it to another team maybe to work on, but it'll take them twice as long because now they have to learn all new code and they have to learn how to, interact and all the experience that goes around with dealing with that feature, for example, if we're revamping an existing piece of functionality. So it's really an inexact, put it that way, science. And it's one of the things that as product managers keep us up at night is, are we working on the right things, right? Like it's a constant question, it's a constant battle. And one of the things I'd say is we're always planning. We're always thinking ahead and trying to plan, like, are we doing the right things? Is the project progressing well? So that we can make the right kind of trade-off and balance decisions. I would also say that as PMs, what we mostly do is say no to things, unfortunately. because we can only do, as everybody says, so much. And that's probably the hardest part of our job most of the time, is that there's so many great ideas and so many things that would add value. Is trying to choose the ones that make the most sense for any given point of time is actually really difficult.
Yeah, I see a parallel on the marketing side. We balance educating the industry, really helping our progressive customers bring the rest of the industry along with them, with the day-to-day marketing, the marketing of what we have to sell today that our sales teams need. So there's kind of that balance. And I think on the product side, you have similar concerns. There's kind of the addressing the longstanding needs, requests based on product features and functionality that are generally known versus here's what's coming next that may not be known, but maybe the direction for the industry to head.
Right. And we also have the added thing of like, what do we need to do now at a framework kind of behind the scenes level to also support future work? And those are all three different areas, right? Like, and not to mention just fixing stuff that's broken. Like there's a huge investment that we make in simply ensuring that we have stability and that things are getting addressed, that customers report. Like I mentioned, support, gets thousands of cases all the time with issues, little things that are bothersome that we need to fix in general too. And so we're trying to, those four areas, did I get to four? I think I might've got to four. There's probably more things that we're trying to look at and balance across the board. So it's not, I would love it if we could just, if everything was created equal and we could be like, yep, this is the stacked rank list and go do that stacked rank list in that order. But that's not the way basically software development at the end of the day works. Is we have to kind of mix and match different things across the board in order to come up with a plan that delivers hopefully value for everyone, which is another big concept I'd mention is that, you kind of alluded to this, Aaron, where you said, you have to have different stakeholders. We have different types of users across the board, right? We have new people coming into Revit. We have people who've been here for 20 years. We have people in the middle. And, we also have maybe new personas that will help get into BIM as well. And so we have to try to balance, like, how do we address all of those different people and different mindsets at the same time? Because I would tell you, in all my customer conversations and all the feedback we've seen, nobody has the same list of what's important to them. And that's probably true for everybody. Like everybody has their, the things that bother them the most. And we're trying to balance all of those across the board.
Yeah. A lot of the time, what I say is my job as a product manager is to look for kind of repetition or consistency. So if I talk to 3, 4, 5 customers and 4 out of 5 of them actually say the same thing, I say, okay, there's a kernel there. There's something we can do because now all of a sudden we have a broad applicability to a lot of people. And so identifying those patterns is one of the things that we do. And so it's hard a lot of the time because there's a lot of patterns and sometimes there is no pattern. And then you basically have to say, okay, based on my experience or based on what I've talked about with customers, what would really make the most impact? Because a great analogy that I've seen is, right, as product management is a little bit like if you have a box and a bunch of blocks and you can't fit all, a bunch of blocks of different sizes and you can't fit all of them in the box, how do you actually figure out which ones you're going to put in? Because that's all you can, that's all you can take with you on your trip. What are your favorite blocks or your most valuable ones? It is not an easy problem, I can tell you, especially because we are constantly talking to so many people. We have stakeholders who are, our customers, who are development teams, and who is certainly kind of Autodesk leadership as well. So trying to, look at ways at making as many people as possible happy, but that is a very interesting negotiation.
I can appreciate that. I once sat down with an elevator equipment manufacturer who wanted to know what do architects need. So I sat them down with 2 large architects, one more design build focused and one more traditional production, and their needs were completely different. So it was to show the breadth of the problems trying to be solved. But I'm not going to let you off the hook. So Sasha, one maybe final question is, we've talked a lot about all these feedback mechanisms about how we hear from our customers, but there's often a sense that we're not out there responding to every comment. We're not necessarily closing the loop. How do we do a better job of that?
I think we can do a better job by basically acknowledging that we were there and saying, thanks for your feedback. We were here. We heard you. I guess it's in a way, it's over the years has been implied. We can make that explicit. I think we struggle with that internally as well. I actually get messages from my boss being like, "Can you just say that it's okay to do this?" So I think we can do the same thing for our customers and just be better about that. To say, "Look, we have heard your feedback. We really appreciate it," because we do. Harlan said in the previous episode that feedback is a gift. 100% agree with him. It is a gift, and we can kind of say thank you for that gift when we have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I would just add, Aaron, that we're a bunch of technology people. We're not necessarily the most socially out there, let's just say. We have a lot of developers, and some of our developers are actually out there in forums responding as well and listening. And trying to say, hey, yep, we heard you, but we can do a better job of that, no doubt. And just responding and saying thank you, like Sasha said, is really important. And that's also what I would say, maybe to end the session is thank you for watching us and for listening to us and for providing the feedback, because it definitely helps us make a better product. But yeah, we can do a lot better job getting out there and responding that we've heard you.
Thanks, Harlan and Sasha. Now let's switch gears and talk to Jeff Campbell. We'd like to hear his perspective on customer engagement. Jeff Campbell, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Aaron. It's great to join you.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you being here. Let's start by having you tell us a bit about yourself and your company.
My name's Jeff Campbell, and I am a senior specialist with Burns McDonnell Engineering. I've worked with Burns McDonnell for 15 years, providing thought leadership around BIM implementation and the Autodesk products being that support, configuration, implementation, adoption. Prior to joining Burns McDonnell, I was a professor of graphics at the University of Central Missouri, where I taught for a number of years in the design and technology program. Burns McDonnell itself as a company is a rather large full service architecture, engineering, and construction firm. We provide engineering and construction services for commercial architecture, federal installations, manufacturing, transmission and power distribution, power generation, water, mission critical services, commercial aviation, food, oil and gas, and environmental services. We're made up of roughly 8,000 professionals located in 18 offices worldwide, including Mexico, the UK, Canada, India, and we have 2 construction affiliates with us. They're ASCO and RevChem on the manufacturing and construction side.
That's pretty involved. So I'm guessing there's been a lot of applications that have come and gone in your background. I'm curious to know when you started with Revit.
I actually started with Revit back when I was teaching at the university. So that was around 2002. I started with Revit 4.5, which I think is roughly just after Autodesk. That was the first release of Autodesk after they purchased it. Offered classes in that around self-study. That's kind of where I started. I joined Burns McDonnell in 2005. They were still using AutoCAD Architecture and AutoCAD MEP. We implemented Revit in 2006. I stood up our first Revit server environment in 2012 and moved into BIM 360 and its usage in 2016, right after it was publicly released.
Revit's grown a little bit since 2002. Along the way, how have you felt about Revit's development? Were you one of the folks pushing that ahead? Was that something that just you happened to learn it at the right time and it was of use at Burns McDonnell?
I've been actively involved in the alpha and the beta programs for years. Prior to even Revit, I was active in the AutoCAD and the AutoCAD Architecture and the AutoCAD MEP, or what at that time was called AutoCAD ABS. So I've been around that environment for a long time. So when Revit started hitting the Autodesk world, I got involved in that at the university level, and I brought that with me to Burns McDonnell. So as we started implementing it at Burns & McDonnell, we became really close with our partners and our account representatives so that we could help influence the product, voice our concerns, and help it mature along the way.
How do you feel about Revit's development as a result of that engagement, and how are you engaged with our development team?
I'm currently engaged with the development team on several sprint reviews. I've been active in the the sprint review for the homes, which is the BIM 360 side. I've taken part in what's now called Inside the Factory, but I was at several of the gunslingers years ago for the Revit development side. As far as how I've seen it grow, it has changed a lot. I feel that there's been a lot of give and take. I was around, when Revit architecture was there. I was there for the introduction of Revit structure and then for Revit MEP. And so the interesting slide in focus being given to MEP where it was needed, or focus giving to structure when it was needed, and moving that focus away from architecture. I've seen all of that. I think coming from a full service firm where I look at architecture, structure, and the trades gives me a little bit different insight than what most people have, because I've seen the development of all of the platforms, not just one specific discipline. And I've helped with the development of all of those platforms. I've gotten to take part in a lot of activities around both Revit architecture and Revit electrical and Revit mechanical in developing those products.
So because of that involvement, do you feel like you've had an influence on on where the product's trajectory has gone? And also, has that benefited you personally?
I think as a general whole, we've influenced how Revit has matured. Autodesk has listened to our feedback. We've gotten attention where attention was needed. We've helped provide insight into how large firms would utilize the software, not just in a single discipline, but in getting all of the disciplines to talk together. The whole goal with Revit, or with us moving to Revit, was having a single ecosystem so that everybody could participate and everybody could collaborate inside of a single organism, which is what I call it, a single organism, so that everybody was talking on the same page. And Revit allows us to do that. And so understanding that I'm going to miss out on some development in electrical while we go focus on a mechanical trade, or if I go focus on structural and I miss something on the plumbing side for that specific year, that give and take is needed so that we can raise everything in that platform together at the same time. The other thing I've seen is it's benefited me personally just from a standpoint of I understand the logistics behind what Autodesk has to go through in order to bring things to market. I've worked closely with a lot of individuals, both on the consulting side and on the product side. And so understanding the give and take, I think, has helped a lot in me understanding where Autodesk is having to shift focus, or why, if we put something on a wish list, why it doesn't show up until 2 releases later. So that give and take, I think, is what we've gained the most out of the relationship.
I can appreciate that. I hear from a lot of customers that just access is even something of value, right? Just Sasha, Harlan, others, and so you can be very candid then about that give and take. I'm curious, Harlan and Sasha, from your side, what does that feel like? Customers like Jeff.
I think from our perspective, it's so valuable to hear that feedback on a regular basis. And, it's been great to see that relationship built out with Burns & McDonnell. And I feel that sometimes we have failed to build out that relationship with some firms, and we'd love to be able to share that with a broader community. I think actually the series, the goal is for us to be a little bit more transparent, to show as many people as we can how we work on Revit, how we develop it. So hopefully this is a little bit eye-opening on kind of the way that we interact with customers and the opportunities that actually exist to provide feedback into that organization. So a lot of the time it can be proactive, I think, from both our sides, from us and from our customers, because we really do appreciate the feedback that we get. I sit on the sprint reviews that Jeff participates in every couple of weeks, and it's wonderful to hear the dialogue that happens between the development team and Jeff, and they're basically testing out things, and they're asking, well, we're thinking about this, does this actually make sense? So it's fantastic to hear from customers on that kind of level.
And I would just add that, I would say thank you to Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, for attending and for all the work in Gunslingers and ITF and testing throughout the years. I mean, I think we really, really value that feedback and that engagement. And I think, what you said about the give and takes in particular, like warms my heart, makes me feel like we have a customer who understands what we're doing, what we're trying to do overall. And I really, really appreciate that perspective. So thank you for coming here today and talking with us.
So Jeff, do you have any examples where feedback like this has impacted a project directly?
I think the best example I can give of where this kind of feedback has impacted us directly was when we first started our experiment into the BIM 360 environment. That was around the 2016 timeframe, 2017 timeframe, and I was lucky enough to get a project to agree to move into this yet tested system. One of the issues that came up early on was reliability and the stability. We spent about a week where the product was up and down constantly. And it wasn't just up and down for an hour, it was down for 5, 6, 7 hours at a time. Having the direct line into Autodesk so that we could get feedback as far as what we were seeing, what they were doing to resolve the issue, what we could do to help resolve the issue was, I think, instrumental to keeping the project engaged in the product. If we would not have had that kind of relationship and that kind of back and forth feedback with Autodesk, I think we would have probably pulled out of BIM 360 and would not have gone back in as soon, for quite some time. But it's kept us engaged, and now we run around 90% of our Revit projects inside of the BIM 360 environment.
I love that example. I was involved with a couple of other large customers when Project Skyscraper became a real product, right? And there were some tense days. I might remember that week in particular, but that sort of positive spirit of let's just make this thing happen. We want to see that in our customers and we want to support it. I mean, I'm speaking, as a former technical salesperson here, but like when a customer is ready to get it done and we're ready to get it done, it's really kind of fun to get through that rough patch and now, to see where it's come. I'm just saying thank you and, in arrears for that, because we need that attitude sometimes when something new rolls out of the gate, like you've said, testing is one thing, real world production is another. So,
yeah, and this, just jump in for a second. I think it's also a great teaser into one of our upcoming discussions around cloud services and resiliency, because, we certainly don't want to be in that kind of state. And it's been thanks to a lot of our kind of pioneer customers who've been really willing to work with us to figure things out that we've gotten Revit Cloud Work Sharing and BIM 360 to a much different state today. So we couldn't have done it without you, Jeff, I think. So we really appreciate your time and your investment and your willingness to put production projects on this.
It's a good plug, Sasha. Much more on the cloud to come.
Yes.
I guess final question, Jeff, any thoughts about what we could do better to engage with customers here at Autodesk?
I think the big thing is transparency. And when I mean transparency, it's letting your customers know the why behind why you're doing something. A lot of the times, we get a new version release and some things have changed, or features we saw that were coming in the alpha and betas, even though they're not promised, weren't there, but they would have been awesome additions to the product. Letting people know the why. It's all about change management in my mind, and a why is a big reason for that. If you tell people and they understand the why you're making choices, then they're more adept at getting on board or explaining to you why what they wanted was important. So a big part of it is transparency, communicating the why, and doing more things like this, or just talking with your customers in general. I think that's a big part of it.
I think on our previous episode, there was some discussion about that. I pointed out to Sasha, we need to close the loop. And then, and both of you, Harlan and Sasha, commented about just wanting to do that, wanting to just show you that you're there, right? The earlier context of this episode, actually. Well, thanks, Jeff. Any further commentary from Harlan and Sasha?
We really appreciate your time, Jeff. It's been really good to hear from you. Hopefully this gives a little bit of transparency to a lot of our customers listening in terms of the things that we do with our customers and the opportunities to engage. One thing we did also want to bring up is we would like to hear what kind of questions you have for our team so that we can start to answer some of them. And so for that, we've actually created an alias that you can email us and ask us your questions as an opportunity to provide feedback into future episodes for Inside the Factory sessions. And you can email us at revitfeedback@autodesk.com.
And Jeff, I just want to say again, thank you for giving us the feedback, and especially the last part about, how we can be more transparent and listening. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're here, and we're always trying to find other new ways to get the word out and also, explain why we're doing things. What is, we can obviously do a lot better. So I take that feedback to heart. And like Sasha said, if there's other folks out there who are interested in asking us questions, want to hear, from their point of view, reach out to the email alias and let us know. We're there to listen.
And with that, thanks everyone for listening in. Stay tuned. Please provide your feedback, but stay tuned for our next episode.